The night was heavy. The cold air of the hospital seemed to carry with it a strange mixture of ether and silence. The fluorescent lights illuminated the long corridors, reflecting on polished floors that smelled of disinfectant. Claire, an 11-year-old girl, sat beside her grandmother Evelyn's bed. Her small hands firmly held the wrinkled hand of the elderly woman, as if that gesture could stop time from taking her away. The constant beep of the heart monitor filled the room with an anguishing cadence, reminding that every second was precious. Claire's eyes were red from so much crying. But within the tears there was a determination that seemed too big for a child her age. She looked at Evelyn's tired face, observing every detail. The deep lines marking her skin, the slight tremor of her dry lips, the dim glow in her eyes. Evelyn had always been the foundation of her life, the only family she had left. Since the death of her parents, it was her grandmother who had offered her comfort, stories, and love. Now, however, Claire felt the world collapsing before her. Then she heard firm footsteps echoing down the hallway. She quickly turned and saw a tall man dressed in an impeccable dark suit. He walked with confidence, as if that place didn't intimidate him. His well-combed hair reflected the cold light of the lamps, and his expression was serious, almost unreachable. There was something distant about him, as if he carried the weight of many silences. Claire didn't know who that man was, but she felt, in an almost desperate impulse, that she had to try. She quickly stood up, ran to the door, and with a trembling voice called out, "Please, sir, save my grandma." The man stopped, surprised. His dark eyes stared intensely at the girl, but he said nothing. He just remained there, observing that child who, in the midst of pain, dared to ask him for something impossible. Claire continued, trying to find words. "She is all I have. Please, don't let her go." Her voice broke at the end, and tears streamed down her face. The silence that followed was suffocating. The man took a deep breath, looked away for a moment, and then returned his gaze to Claire. He didn't answer. He just nodded slightly before walking further down the hallway, as if running away from something greater than he could bear. Claire stood still, her heart racing. She didn't know who that stranger was, but she felt there was something inexplicable in his gaze, as if he had been touched by her plea. She returned to her grandmother's side, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and sat again beside her. As she stroked Evelyn's fragile fingers, Claire whispered, "I'll find a way, Grandma, I promise." On the other side of the corridor, the man continued walking, but his thoughts were far away. The girl's voice echoed in his mind like a call impossible to ignore. He tried to push that feeling away, but an old pain was being awakened, a buried memory that threatened to surface. In that instant, fate was silently beginning to weave the threads of a story that would forever change the lives of Claire, her grandmother, and even that unknown man. What Claire didn't know, when she pleaded with her open heart, was that she had just spoken to her grandmother's lost son, a man whom time and circumstances had separated, but who still carried within himself a wound that had never healed. And as the night went on, the hospital became the stage for a reunion no one could have foreseen, but which was about to reveal secrets buried for decades. It was just an innocent plea, a desperate request from a girl. But that plea would be capable of changing destinies, rebuilding broken bridges, and awakening forgotten pains and hopes. Claire's heart raced, but inside her burned a flame that refused to go out. Deep down, without understanding, she felt that something was about to happen. Something that would forever transform the meaning of the word family. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, painting the modest bedroom in golden tones. The house where Claire lived with her grandmother Evelyn was simple, yet every detail seemed to carry memories. The worn rug on the floor bore stains of tea and echoes of old laughter, and the walls were adorned with photographs that told the story of a lifetime. There were family portraits, pictures of Evelyn as a young woman smiling while holding a child in her arms, and small keepsakes from trips that seemed very far away in time. Claire loved that space, even when the roof let the sound of rain slip through on stormy nights. To her, That home was the safest place in the world, because Evelyn was there. Her grandmother had the gift of turning any difficulty into a lesson and every simple moment into a precious memory. Mornings were almost always the same. The smell of toasted bread filled the kitchen, while Evelyn prepared chamomile tea. Claire liked to watch how her grandmother slowly stirred the spoon, as if that gesture were part of a secret ritual. There was tenderness in every movement, and that warmed the girl's heart. "Drink this, darling," Evelyn would say, handing her a small cup. "Chamomile will calm your soul." Claire smiled, even though she didn't really like the bitter taste. What mattered wasn't the drink, but the care with which it was offered. When they weren't in the kitchen, they spent hours in the living room. Evelyn loved to read aloud, her gentle voice turning old books into vivid adventures. Claire wide-eyed would dive into the stories, imagining distant kingdoms and unlikely heroes. Sometimes Evelyn paused the reading to tell stories from her own life, like when she worked in a small bookstore or when she dreamed of traveling the world. "One day, you must follow your dreams, Claire. Never let fear hold you back." The girl kept every word like a treasure. But behind those cozy moments, there were signs of fragility. Evelyn coughed more than before. Her steps were slow and tired, and her hands trembled slightly when holding objects. Claire noticed everything, but never complained. On the contrary, she tried to help in every detail, setting the table, organizing the books, sweeping the yard. It was as if she wanted to shield her grandmother from the weight of old age. There was also a mystery that lingered in that house. Claire noticed it in certain silences, when Evelyn gazed at an old photograph on the shelf, a faded image of a young woman with a small boy beside her. Whenever Claire asked who it was, Evelyn would look away and answer simply, "Someone from the past, my dear." But her eyes said more than her words. They carried longing, perhaps regret. Claire didn't insist, though she felt there was an untold story there, an absence that weighed heavily. The nights were different. When exhaustion took over, Evelyn would ask Claire to sit by her side and hold her hand. "Promise me something, Claire," she would say, looking into her granddaughter's eyes. "Promise me that, no matter what happens, you'll always keep kindness in your heart." "I promise, Grandma," Claire would answer sweetly. That bond was their strength. Evelyn found in her granddaughter a reason to endure, and Claire saw in her grandmother her anchor in the world. It was a relationship woven in love, in small gestures, and in a silent complicity only those who have feared losing someone can understand. As days passed, however, Evelyn's health worsened. Walks to the yard became rare, and she could no longer prepare tea by herself. Claire took on the care naturally, washing dishes, making her grandmother's bed, even trying to cook, though often burning the toast. Evelyn, even in frailty, smiled as she watched her trying. It was in this context of fragility that the hospitalization came. The hospital was a hostile environment for Claire, who was used to the warmth of home. The smell of disinfectant replaced the aroma of lavender, and cold hallways took the place of the sunny yard. But she remained strong, always by her grandmother's side, as if she could protect her from everything. Yet behind her strength, Claire was afraid. Afraid of losing the only person she had left, afraid of not being able to keep the promise of never leaving her alone. That fear was so great that, when she saw the unknown man pass by in the hallway that night, she didn't think twice before begging for help. The life of Claire and Evelyn was marked by simplicity, love, and secrets kept in silence. And although the girl didn't know it, every detail of that modest life was a piece of a much larger puzzle that was about to be put together. The innocent plea made to the stranger in the hallway wasn't only the fruit of desperation, but also the reflection of a lifetime of deep bonds built on true love. And it would be that same love that would guide the next steps of a story that was only just beginning. The man Claire had seen in the hospital corridor was named Michael. To many, he was just a public figure, known as one of the most influential businessmen in the city. His name appeared in business magazines, associated with bold investments, multi-million-dollar mergers, and a strategic mind few could keep up with. But behind the shine of the headlines, there was an emptiness that no success could ever fill. That night, when he heard the desperate plea of the girl, Michael felt something strange. A pang in his chest that didn't come only from compassion for a suffering child, but from something deeper, almost familiar. He tried to brush off the feeling, as he always did when inconvenient memories threatened to emerge. He walked down the corridor as if nothing had happened, but the words echoed in his mind. Please, save my grandma. Back in his luxurious penthouse, located at the top of a glass skyscraper that dominated the city skyline, Michael looked like a man who had everything. The nighttime view was breathtaking, lit-up streets, cars constantly moving, life pulsing below. And yet, the apartment felt empty. The glass walls reflected not only the city, but also the loneliness that lived inside him. There were modern paintings on the walls, minimalist designer furniture, crystal glasses on the marble table, everything perfect, organized, silent. The kind of place that would impress any visitor, but offered no warmth. Michael rarely had anyone over. In fact, he avoided it. The space was his refuge and, at the same time, his prison. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and walked to the window. The reflection revealed his own face, firm expression, penetrating gaze, but tired. There was no joy in his eyes, only determination. People described him as cold, but the truth was that he had learned to be that way. As a child, he had not had an easy life. He had been raised in temporary homes, always moving, never stable, with no constant maternal figure. He learned early that the world offered no guarantees. That childhood, marked by absence, shaped his personality, turning him into someone who trusted no one but himself. Yet something in that girl at the hospital stirred him. He had seen pleas from many people throughout his life, investors, employees, even desperate competitors, but never anything like that. That child didn't just ask for help, she offered trust. Michael tried to distract himself with company reports, contracts waiting for his signature, but he couldn't. Each time he read a line, the image of the girl returned to his mind. Her pleading eyes, her fragility, and at the same time, the strength in her words. Why did it affect me this way? He muttered to himself, setting the glass down. Deep down, he knew the answer, but didn't want to face it. The next morning, he went back to the hospital. He told himself it was just curiosity, that he only wanted to know if the elderly woman would survive. But when he entered the corridor and saw Claire asleep, her head resting on her grandmother's bed, something inside him broke. The scene was as simple as it was powerful. The girl, even exhausted, had not left her grandmother's side for a single moment. Michael observed in silence, feeling a strange mixture of tenderness and pain. Evelyn, still unconscious, looked fragile, but there was a serene dignity in her expression. Michael took a deep breath, tried to walk away, but then noticed something. On the nightstand, next to a glass of water and some medicine, was a small wooden frame. Inside it, an old photograph, already yellowed with age. A smiling young woman, hair loose in the wind, hugged a small boy with intense eyes. Michael froze. That boy was him. His heart raced, and for a moment he felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He picked up the frame with trembling hands, brought the photo close to his face, and recognized himself, no more than 5 years old. He also recognized the woman's smile, the same look, now resting on Evelyn's tired face. He put the photo back, almost breathless. Could it be, he whispered, but didn't finish the sentence. At that moment, Claire opened her eyes and saw him. Startled, she quickly sat up. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice still weak from sleep. Michael hesitated, recomposed himself, and replied, "I was just passing by." Claire narrowed her eyes, suspicious. She felt there was something strange about this man. She didn't understand, but something in his gaze seemed to carry secrets. Michael left before she could ask more questions. He walked quickly down the corridor, as if fleeing from a ghost. Inside, however, the storm had already begun. Throughout the day, he couldn't think of anything else. The photo, the old woman's face, the girl's plea. Everything blended into a narrative impossible to ignore. And the more he tried to push it away, the stronger became the certainty rising within him. That woman, Evelyn, could be his mother. And that little girl, Claire, unknowingly had asked for help from her grandmother's lost son. The pieces were beginning to fit together, but Michael knew facing that truth wouldn't be easy. The past he had spent years trying to bury was now knocking at his door, and with it, emotions he thought he could never feel again. Michael spent the rest of the night awake. The glass of whiskey remained untouched on the marble table, and the company reports scattered around him were nothing more than meaningless papers compared to the turmoil inside his chest. The yellowed photograph still burned in his memory, as if it had been branded with fire. He lay down on the sofa, but sleep never came. Instead, memories appeared, fragmented pieces of a childhood he had spent decades trying to bury. There were blurry images, a young woman cradling him in her arms, the smell of lavender mixed with fresh bread, a soft laugh that warmed his heart. Then, emptiness, silence, abandonment. Michael remembered being taken away, unfamiliar hands dragging him through doors that never opened again behind him. From that moment on, his life became a series of temporary homes, different faces, no roots. He had grown up believing he had been forgotten, that he was unworthy of love. Now, that photograph resurfaced as a late answer, and the woman in the picture. That woman was Evelyn. The same one lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. The next day, unable to resist, Michael returned to the hospital. He didn't admit to himself that he was going to see Evelyn. He preferred to believe it was just curiosity. But deep down, he knew he was going to confront a truth that haunted him. When he arrived, he found Claire sitting in the waiting room with a notebook in her lap. She was drawing with worn colored pencils, sketching simple figures that seemed to portray scenes from her life: a small house, a smiling woman, a girl with braids beside her. Michael stopped for a moment to watch. His heart tightened at the purity of that gesture. Claire lifted her gaze and stared at him. "You again," she said suspiciously. Michael forced a smile, but his voice came out lower than he wanted. "Yes, me again. How's your grandma?" Claire sighed. "She's the same. The doctors say she needs treatment we can't afford." Those words hit Michael like a blow. Instinctively, he reached for his pocket, where he always carried his leather wallet, but stopped himself. He didn't want it to look like pity or charity. He wasn't ready to expose himself like that. Instead, he asked, "Why do you draw?" Claire lifted the notebook, showing him a colorful drawing of a gray-haired woman holding hands with a smiling little girl. "Because it helps me remember. Even if Grandma, if she..." Her voice broke. "I'll still have these." Michael looked away. Her honesty disarmed him. He wanted to say something, but no words came. He only nodded and stood up, walking down the hallway toward Evelyn's room. Inside, he found the old woman asleep. The sound of the heart monitor filled the room. He approached the nightstand and, almost without noticing, picked up the photograph again. His fingers brushed over the worn surface of the image, as if he wanted to cross time with his touch. The memories returned with force. He remembered the day he was torn from that woman's arms. A stern man took him away while she cried, begging them not to. Michael didn't understand the reasons, only the abandonment. And that emptiness had silently shaped him, building the coldness everyone now knew. "Why didn't you come for me?" he murmured, looking at the sleeping woman. But Evelyn didn't respond. Her tired body breathed slowly. Her eyes remained closed. Michael put the photo back and stepped away, disturbed, but he hadn't realized Claire was at the door, watching everything. "Why are you looking at that picture?" the girl asked, frowning. Michael turned, startled. "Just curiosity." "You looked like you knew her," Claire insisted. He hesitated. He wanted to deny it, but the intensity in the girl's eyes made him retreat. He said nothing. He just walked up to her, knelt down, and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Take care of your grandma. She needs you." Claire stared at him, confused, but nodded. Michael quickly left, without looking back. That night, in his penthouse, he opened an old drawer he had avoided for years. Inside, there were only a few childhood keepsakes: a small blue bead bracelet, a crumpled note, and a photograph almost identical to the one he had seen in the hospital. He had kept it like someone keeps a hidden wound, without courage to look. It was proof that confirmed his suspicion. Evelyn wasn't just any woman. She was his mother. Michael felt his legs weaken. He sat on the floor, photograph in hand, and for the first time in decades allowed tears to fall. They weren't only of pain, they were of longing, of a lost love that, suddenly, seemed within reach again. But along with that discovery came fear. Fear of not being accepted, of not being forgiven, of everything being too late. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Claire tucked her grandmother's blanket, unaware that the mysterious man she had begged for help carried inside him a secret that would forever change their lives. And so, without anyone foreseeing, the lines of the past began to intertwine with the present, preparing the stage for a revelation that would mark not only Evelyn and Michael, but also little Claire, who in her innocence had been the bridge between two worlds separated by time. Michael woke up early that morning, though sleep had abandoned him long before the sun rose. He had spent hours lying in bed, staring at the ceiling of his silent penthouse, as if the shadows cast by the windows accused him of something he could not yet define. The photograph still sat on the table, beside the untouched glass of whiskey. He hadn't dared put it away. It was as though that image had opened an old wound that had never healed. He stood, pacing through the wide living room, the sound of his footsteps echoing against the cold glass walls. No matter how many achievements he had accumulated, how many multi-million-dollar contracts he had signed, or how many magazine covers displayed his name, none of it filled the emptiness that now seemed unbearable. The past he had always believed buried was rising to the surface with the strength of an unstoppable wave. The image of Evelyn as a young woman, holding him as a small boy, haunted him like a ghost. Her gentle gaze, frozen in that photograph, seemed to whisper questions without answers. Why had she let him go? Why had she allowed him to be torn from her arms? And above all, why was she there now, lying in a hospital bed, so close and yet so far? Michael tried to convince himself that he should not get involved. He had built a solid life, forged upon the calculated coldness that protected him from pain. Letting that past return meant risking everything he had fought for. But deep down, something gnawed at his defenses. The memory of Claire's voice echoed without mercy. "Please, save my grandma." He knew he couldn't ignore it. In the days that followed, Michael was torn between his office and the hospital. At work, his employees noticed his distraction. Meetings that used to be efficient dragged on, contracts piled up unsigned, and his gaze wandered beyond the glass walls of the executive floor. Whispers spread quietly. Their boss seemed absent. At night, he returned to the hospital, unseen by anyone. He lingered in the corridor, watching Claire through the half-open door. She never left Evelyn's side, sometimes reading softly, sometimes simply holding her grandmother's hand. There was a quiet strength in that child that unsettled him. How could someone so young carry so much courage? One night, as he saw her asleep, with her head resting on the edge of the bed, Michael felt a sharp pang. He stepped closer, watching the delicate features of her face. Her innocence contrasted with the hardness of his own life. And for the first time in many years, Michael felt ashamed of himself. Ashamed of living surrounded by luxury but empty of affection. Ashamed of having closed himself to all vulnerability. He whispered, almost without realizing it, "If only things had been different." Suddenly, Claire stirred, waking. Her half-closed eyes met his. "You again?" she murmured sleepily. "Why do you keep coming here?" Michael took a deep breath. He didn't want to answer, but the girl pressed on. "You look like you know my grandma. Is that it? Who are you?" He looked away, unable to face that question. "I'm just someone who knows what it is to lose." Claire frowned, but had no time to ask more. Evelyn coughed softly in bed, and the girl rushed to adjust her pillow. Michael took the chance to leave, carrying an even tighter knot in his chest. Back in his penthouse, he paced like a prisoner inside himself. He couldn't decide what to do. If he revealed the truth, he might face rejection. And if he stayed silent, he could lose forever the chance to reconcile with the past. As he wrestled with his thoughts, memories of his childhood in temporary homes returned. He recalled the smell of reheated food, the shouting of adults who didn't care for him, the nights when he cried in secret to avoid being scolded. Every memory was an open wound. Everything could have been different if that woman, his mother, had remained. But now, looking at Claire, he began to see something he had never understood before. Maybe it hadn't been her choice. Maybe Evelyn had suffered too. The photograph, her gaze, the care with which she had kept that memory, all pointed to a love interrupted, not erased. Michael felt torn between rage and compassion, between pain and the need to draw near. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own battles. The doctors spoke to her about treatments, but everything seemed distant. Too expensive for someone who had almost nothing. The girl started selling her drawings near the hospital entrance. She sat on a small improvised stool, offering little colored papers to visitors. Some bought out of pity, others just smiled and walked on. Still, she persisted, because it was the only way she knew to try to save her grandmother. Michael once watched her from afar. He saw when a hurried woman refused to buy a drawing, and Claire's smile fell for an instant. But then the girl pulled herself together, lifting another paper to show the next passerby. That determination struck him deeply. He recognized in her the same strength he had seen in Evelyn's eyes in that old photograph. It was impossible to ignore. That night, when he returned home, Michael opened again the drawer where he kept old keepsakes. Among the few objects, he found a small bracelet made of blue beads, broken at one end. He remembered wearing it as a child. It was the only thing he had kept all those years, a silent link to the mother he had lost. He closed his eyes and squeezed the bracelet tightly in his palm. A memory came like lightning. He was sitting on his mother's lap, too small for his feet to touch the ground. She ran her fingers gently over the beads of the bracelet, smiling. "Blue, like your eyes," she said in a sweet voice. Michael suddenly opened his eyes, swallowing hard. The contrast tore him apart. The same woman who had once rocked him with tenderness was the one he had believed had abandoned him. How to reconcile these two versions? Hours passed. The wall clock struck 3 in the morning when Michael finally gave in. He sat before the photograph, still holding the bracelet, and let the tears flow. He cried as he hadn't since childhood, without shame, without restraint. "Why now? Why only now?" he whispered, his voice broken. He knew Evelyn was fragile, that she might have only days left. If he didn't face her now, he would lose forever the chance to hear the truth, to know why destiny had torn them apart. But there was also fear. Fear that the answer wouldn't be what he hoped. Fear that she would confirm his worst nightmare, that she had truly not wanted him. This dilemma consumed him. Part of him wanted to run to the hospital and fall to his knees by her bed. Another part wanted to disappear forever, to flee before exposing himself to such pain. At dawn, sunlight filtered through the wide windows, but for Michael, everything looked gray. He walked to the kitchen, prepared coffee, but couldn't drink it. He felt like a ghost inside his own life. Meanwhile, Claire remained by her grandmother's side. He knew it, because he couldn't stop imagining the scene. The girl reading softly, adjusting the pillow, holding that frail hand. And deep down, something told him that maybe Claire was the key. The bridge that could help him cross the abyss between anger and forgiveness. Michael closed his eyes and breathed deeply. He could delay no longer. "I need to know," he said firmly, almost as a command to himself. And so, with his heart at war, he made the decision that would change everything. He would return to the hospital. Not as a stranger, not as a distant observer, but as someone willing to face the truth, even if that truth destroyed him. The path to the hospital felt longer than ever. Michael drove his black Mercedes, but he paid no attention to the traffic, the red lights, or the hum of the city awakening. His heart pounded hard, each beat echoing in the suffocating silence of the car. He knew he could no longer postpone. With every mile, the decision became irreversible. The time had come to face the past, to confront Evelyn, and to discover if the answers he had sought all his life were truly there, just behind a door. When he parked in the hospital lot, a shiver ran down his spine. He stepped out slowly, breathing deeply, as if the air itself carried a weight he had to swallow. His footsteps echoed down the corridor, blending with the sound of gurneys being pushed and the metallic clinking of trays. With each step, he thought of Claire's face, of the photograph, of the blue beaded bracelet still tucked in his pocket. When he stopped in front of the door, he hesitated. His palms were sweaty, his heart racing. For a moment, he thought of turning back, of giving up. But then he heard Claire's gentle voice on the other side, reading softly. She was reading to her grandmother, with tenderness, as if every word were a prayer. That sound gave him courage. He pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room was bathed in pale light. Evelyn lay still, connected to wires and tubes, breathing with difficulty. Claire was beside her, the book open in her lap, but her eyes lifted the moment she noticed Michael's presence. The girl narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "You again," she said firmly, closing the book. "Why are you always here?" Michael took a deep breath. There was no more room for lies. He took a few steps closer to the bed, but kept his distance from the girl. "I'm here because I have to be," he answered, his voice low, almost broken. Claire frowned, not understanding. But before she could question him, Evelyn moved her head slightly, as if awakening from a deep dream. Her eyes opened slowly, tired, but alive enough to recognize the figure before her. She fixed her gaze on Michael, and in that instant, time seemed to stop. The air grew heavy, the beeping of the heart monitor louder. "Michael," she whispered, her fragile voice laden with emotion. His heart raced. He hadn't expected to hear his name. Not like that, not with such weight. He stepped forward, tears welling in his eyes. "It's me, Mother," he said, his voice trembling. Claire's eyes widened, unable to process what she had just heard. She looked from her grandmother to Michael, her mouth falling open in shock. "Mother, he's your son." Evelyn reached out her trembling hand, as if trying to touch his face. "My boy, I never stopped loving you." Tears streamed down Michael's face. For years he had imagined this moment, but never truly believed it would come. He dropped to his knees beside the bed, gripping his mother's hand tightly, as if afraid she might vanish again. "Why? Why did you let them take me away? Why did you never come for me?" His voice was a mixture of pain and anger, a muffled cry he had waited decades to release. Evelyn drew a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. "I didn't want to. They forced me. I was young, powerless. They told me it was the only way to protect you." Michael squeezed his eyes shut, wrestling with anger. Every word cut like a knife, yet offered an explanation he had never had. "All these years, I thought you abandoned me." "Never," Evelyn replied, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Every day, I prayed for you. Every day, I hoped you would forgive me." Claire remained silent, watching the scene, torn between crying and smiling. The shock gave way to a strange sense of hope. The mysterious man she had once distrusted was, in fact, her uncle, her grandmother's lost son. Michael lowered his head, pressing his forehead against his mother's hand. "I don't know if I can forgive. But I don't want to hate anymore." With effort, Evelyn lifted her other hand and stroked his hair. Her voice was almost a whisper. "That's enough. That's all I ever wanted." At that moment, the heart monitor gave a brief alarm, making both Michael and Claire jump. Evelyn's breathing grew heavier, but peace lingered in her face. "I don't have much time," she said, her voice faltering. "But before I go, I want you to look at each other. See one another. You are not alone. You have each other. Michael turned toward Claire. The girl stared back, her eyes filled with tears and surprise. The man she had thought a distant stranger was now part of her story, her own blood. He wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I promise, Claire, I'll never leave you alone. Never." Her face lit with a mix of pain and hope. For the first time in a long while, she felt she didn't have to carry the weight of the world alone. Evelyn breathed deeply, as if trying to etch that image into her heart. With the last of her strength, she whispered, "This is what I always dreamed of, my family together again." Michael leaned closer, pressing his forehead against his mother's. "I forgive you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't want to live with hate. I just want you to know. I'm still your son." Evelyn's tears flowed silently. She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. The heart monitor wavered again, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Claire gripped her grandmother's hand tightly. "Grandma, stay with me. Please, don't go yet." Evelyn opened her eyes one last time, gazed at her granddaughter with love, and said in the faintest voice, "I will always be with you, my little one. Always." Then, serenely, the monitor marked the final straight line. Silence filled the room. Michael felt the ground vanish beneath him. He sank further to his knees, embracing his mother's frail body. Claire sobbed beside him, broken-hearted, but clinging tightly to his hand. And in that moment, amid tears and farewell, both realized the greatness of what Evelyn had left behind, not only memories, but a bond restored. Love, even wounded, had found its way back. The hospital room, once a place of pain, had become the stage for a silent miracle, the reunion of a family. The room was wrapped in a dense silence, as if even the air itself was afraid to move. Evelyn lay on the bed, her eyes half closed, yet still fixed on the son kneeling beside her. Michael clutched her hand tightly, terrified of losing once again what life had already stolen from him once. On the other side, Claire stood close, her face bathed in tears. She couldn't fully grasp the magnitude of what was happening, but she knew she was witnessing something extraordinary, something larger than herself. Evelyn's frail hands pressed both Michael's and Claire's together, uniting them. That simple gesture carried immeasurable weight, with the last of her strength. She was stitching together the bonds that time had torn apart. "You are what I have left that's real, my family," she murmured in her weak voice, every word leaving her lips like a sigh. "Fate stole my son from me, but God has given you both back to me. Don't let anger or pride destroy what can still be lived." Michael bowed his head, his tears falling onto his mother's hand. For years, he had built walls around his heart, trying to protect himself from pain. Now, facing the woman he had always believed had abandoned him, he realized those same walls had been his prison. "I spent my whole life believing I wasn't loved, that I wasn't enough for you." His voice trembled, every word ripped from an old wound. "And now you tell me you never forgot me. I don't know if I can believe, but I want to believe." With great effort, Evelyn lifted her free hand and touched his face. Her cold, fragile fingers traced his well-kept beard, as if trying to memorize again the features she had lost so long ago. "Believe, my son. If there was a mistake, it wasn't my love for you. That never died." Claire watched in silence, her heart aching. She stepped closer, and in her trembling voice said, "Grandma, he can take care of you now. We won't let you go." Evelyn smiled tenderly at her granddaughter, her eyes filled with tears. "My sweet Claire, you have always been the light of my life. Even without knowing it, you kept me alive until now. And now, I see that you brought my son back to me." The heart monitor let out an irregular sound, startling both Michael and Claire. Evelyn's breathing was labored, but serenity lingered in her expression. "I don't have much time," she said, her voice fading. "But before I leave, I want you to look at each other, truly see one another. You are not alone. You have each other." Michael turned to Claire. The girl met his eyes, tears streaming, surprise still etched on her face. The man she had once thought a cold stranger was now part of her own story, her blood. He gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "I promise, Claire, I'll never leave you alone, never." Her face lit with a fragile smile, a glimmer of hope breaking through her grief. For the first time in a long while, she felt she didn't have to bear the weight of life by herself. Evelyn took a deep breath, as if etching that image into her heart. With her last bit of strength, she whispered, "This is all I ever dreamed of. My family reunited." Michael leaned down, pressing his forehead to his mother's. "I forgive you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't want to live with hatred. I just want you to know, I'm still your son." Tears ran silently down Evelyn's face. She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. The heart monitor faltered again, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Claire clutched her grandmother's hand desperately. "Grandma, stay with me. Please, don't leave yet." Evelyn opened her eyes one last time, gazed at her granddaughter with immense tenderness, and said in a whisper, "I will always be with you, my little one. Always." Then, serenely, the monitor drew the final straight line. Silence fell over the room. Michael felt the floor vanish beneath him. He sank lower to his knees, wrapping his arms around his mother's frail body. Claire sobbed beside him, broken-hearted, but holding tightly onto his hand. In that moment, amidst tears and farewell, they both understood the greatness of what Evelyn had left behind. Not just memories, but a bond restored. Love, though wounded, had found its way back. The hospital room, once a place of pain, had become the stage for a silent miracle, the reunion of a family. The silence that filled the room after Evelyn's last breath seemed eternal. The heart monitor remained with its straight, cold, definitive line, while Claire cried softly, clinging to her grandmother's arm. Her delicate sobs echoed in the small space, contrasting with the serenity on Evelyn's face, who finally rested in peace. Michael couldn't move. Kneeling beside the bed, he kept holding his mother's lifeless hand, as if he still expected her to squeeze his fingers back. His mind spun in a whirlwind of feelings: regret, love, loss, but also a strange sense of liberation. For the first time, he knew the truth. For the first time, he no longer had to live as a prisoner of unanswered questions. Claire lifted her red eyes to him, seeking support. Despite the pain, there was something in her look that said, "Don't leave me alone." Michael understood immediately. He wrapped his arm around the girl and pulled her against his chest. She let herself be embraced, crying even harder, but finding some relief in the warmth of that unexpected hug. "She's gone," Claire whispered, almost voiceless, "and now, only the two of us remain." Michael swallowed hard, tears still running. "No, Claire, you're not alone. I promise you'll never be alone again." The girl buried her face against his chest, seeking strength. He closed his eyes, feeling an immense weight on his shoulders, but also a new responsibility that didn't frighten him. On the contrary, it gave him purpose. A few minutes later, nurses entered the room. With silent respect, they began the necessary procedures. Michael and Claire stepped back, but they kept their hands clasped, just as Evelyn had asked. It was painful to see that fragile figure being covered with a white sheet, but somehow, they both felt that Evelyn was still there, alive in every gesture, in every memory. When they left the room, the hospital corridor seemed different. The fluorescent lights, once cold and impersonal, now had a soft glow, as if illuminating a new path. Michael looked at Claire, so small and so brave, and realized that this girl was not just a suffering child. She was the continuation of Evelyn's strength. In the days that followed, the weight of absence was brutal. Evelyn's funeral brought together only a few acquaintances, some neighbors, and old family friends. Michael remained by Claire's side the whole time, steady, even when his own pain crushed him. The simple coffin was covered with white flowers, and Claire placed one of her drawings on top of it, a colorful image of her grandmother smiling, holding her hand. "So you'll never forget me, Grandma. And so I'll never forget you." she whispered. Michael felt tears fall, but he didn't try to hide them. For the first time in many years, he didn't care about appearing vulnerable. There, before his mother's grave, he understood that true strength was not in hiding pain, but in accepting it. After the ceremony, he took Claire back to the small house where she had lived with Evelyn. The place seemed filled with memories. The scent of lavender still hung in the air, as if Evelyn's presence stubbornly resisted. Claire entered slowly, her eyes scanning every corner, the worn armchair where Evelyn liked to read, the time-worn table, the photographs spread across the walls. Michael watched in silence. A knot formed in his throat when he faced the simplicity of that home, so far from the cold luxury in which he lived. It was as though here there was something he had never had, human warmth. Claire sat on the sofa and pulled over herself an old blanket that smelled of chamomile. "I don't know how to live without her," she murmured, hugging the fabric. Michael approached and knelt before her. "You don't have to live without love, Claire. I know I'm not your grandmother, and I'll never take her place. But I am your uncle. I'm part of you, just as you are part of me. And I promise I'll take care of you, just as she did." The girl lifted her tearful eyes and looked at him. There was distrust, but also hope. "Do you really promise? You won't leave me alone, I promise. For the rest of my life." Claire took a deep breath and finally allowed a timid smile through her tears. It was like a ray of sun breaking through heavy clouds. In the days that followed, Michael began visiting the house often. He helped Claire with chores, organized medical documents, took care of Evelyn's memories. He found his mother's old notebooks, full of notes and unsent letters. In many of them, there were mentions of the lost son, wishes for reunion, silent pleas for forgiveness. Every word written by Evelyn was both a balm and a wound. Michael read in silence, sometimes out loud for Claire, who listened attentively. Little by little, they both found comfort in those pages, as if Evelyn was still guiding them from afar. One night, after tidying up the kitchen, Michael sat with Claire on the porch of the house. The sky was full of stars, and the air carried the sweet scent of night. The girl, hugging a pillow, asked, "Do you think Grandma is looking at us now?" Michael looked up at the dark sky, the stars shining like distant eyes. "I'm sure, Claire. And I think she's happy to see us together." The girl smiled, wiping her eyes. "Then I'll keep drawing for her. That way, when I look at the sky, it's like I'm showing my drawings for her to see." Michael nodded, moved. He realized that this child carried a purity the world had never allowed him to keep. And in that moment, he understood that he had to protect that light at any cost. Evelyn's loss left an immense void, but it also opened space for something new. It was not only the end of a life, it was the beginning of a new family. The days that followed Evelyn's passing felt like walking through a fog-covered road. Claire, so used to her grandmother's constant presence, felt the emptiness in every corner of the house. The silence was louder than ever. There was no longer the smell of chamomile tea in the mornings, nor the gentle voice reading stories at dusk. Yet Evelyn's memory lingered in every detail, as though her spirit had seeped into the walls and objects. Michael, meanwhile, divided himself between the relentless pace of his business world and the need to be present for Claire. His life had once been filled with commitments, meetings, luxury dinners, and calculated decisions. Now, for the first time, he found himself trading a conference room for the simple kitchen table of Evelyn's old house, helping the girl with her schoolwork or listening to her talk about her drawings. At first, Claire remained reserved. There was still a shadow of distrust in her eyes. After all, how could she immediately trust a man who had suddenly appeared, revealing himself as her uncle after so many years of absence and mystery? But little by little, Michael began to earn her trust, not with grand promises, but with simple gestures. He was there when she woke up, frightened in the middle of the night. He was there to buy her new school supplies without being asked. He was there, most of all, to listen. One night, Claire sat at the table, scribbling in her sketchbook. Michael watched quietly, leaning against the doorway. "What are you drawing?" he asked softly. She showed him the page. A portrait of Evelyn smiling, with Claire and Michael holding hands beside her. It's our family. Even if Grandma isn't here anymore, I want to remember her like this. Michael's throat tightened. He walked over, ran his hand gently over her hair, and said, "She would be so proud of you." Claire lifted her eyes. "And you? Will you keep staying here?" Michael took a deep breath. "Yes, I promised you wouldn't be alone. And I don't break promises." Those words lit up Claire's face. A shy smile appeared, but it was enough for Michael to know he was on the right path. In the days that followed, he made an important decision. He hired a housekeeper to help them, but insisted that the girls' routine remain simple, just as Evelyn had taught her. No excessive luxuries. Nothing that would strip Claire of the essence that made her so special. Michael realized he didn't need to pull her into his sophisticated world. It was he who needed to learn to live in hers. Gradually, the house began to come alive again. The garden, once neglected, started to bloom after Michael and Claire began tending it together. She taught him how to plant seeds, and he, clumsy at first, did his best to follow her instructions. They laughed when their hands got covered in soil. And in those small moments, Michael discovered a side of himself he had never known: lightness. One afternoon, while sorting through old photo albums, Claire found a box of letters hidden at the back of a drawer. They were letters Evelyn had written but never sent. Many of them were addressed to Michael. Carefully, he began to read them. The words spoke of longing, regret, prayers that one day she would see her son again. Michael wept silently as he read, and Claire, seeing his tears, placed her small hand on his. "She never forgot you, Uncle Michael. She just couldn't have you back." He smiled through his tears and squeezed the girl's hand. "You're right. I wasted so many years believing otherwise." Those letters were a turning point. They not only confirmed Evelyn's love, but also gave Michael the certainty that he was no longer alone. The past was no longer just pain. Now there was redemption. As time passed, the bond between him and Claire grew stronger. On weekends, they walked through the park, and Michael laughed at the innocent jokes she told. He discovered he was capable of playing, of smiling without calculation. Deep down, he realized he had always longed for this: a family, however small, but real. One day, while driving Claire to school, she turned from the back seat and said, "You know, Uncle Michael, sometimes I think Grandma left just so we could find each other." Her words struck him like lightning. He looked into the rearview mirror, eyes moist, and replied, "Maybe you're right, Claire. Maybe she left us this gift before she went." That night, sitting alone on the porch of the house, Michael gazed at the starry sky. He felt different. He was no longer the solitary man surrounded by empty luxury. He was a man who now had someone to fight for, someone to live for. Deep inside, he knew Evelyn had freed him in her final moments, freed him from anger, from loneliness, from the weight of believing himself unloved. And in doing so, she had given him and Claire the chance to write a new story together. Michael closed his eyes and smiled. For the first time in many years, the future didn't seem like an enemy, but a promise. And so, life went on, not without pain, but with hope. The girl who had begged a stranger to save her grandmother had found, without knowing, not only an uncle, but also a companion to face the world. And the man who had believed himself condemned to solitude discovered, in the innocent plea of a child, the way back to love. Sometimes destiny writes chapters we don't understand right away. But when we least expect it, those chapters reveal that even the greatest losses can open doors to new beginnings. And in that simple home, filled with memories and new laughter, a new story began. Not perfect, not without scars, but profoundly human, a new beginning. Sometimes, life surprises us in the most unexpected moments. A young girl who thought she was alone found the courage to ask a stranger for help. A man who had spent decades locked inside his own pain discovered in that plea the key to finding his mother again and to rediscovering himself. And a grandmother, in the final moments of her life, managed to unite what time had once torn apart. Love does not erase scars, but it can transform them into marks of hope. Michael and Claire learned this in the most painful, yet most powerful way. Evelyn's farewell was not only an ending, it was also the beginning of a new chapter, written from the promise that they would never again face life in solitude. That is the lesson this story leaves us. Even when everything seems lost, there is always a possibility to start over. Sometimes pain opens space for new connections to blossom. Sometimes what we believe to be the end is only the curve that leads us to an unexpected path. If you've stayed with us until this moment, we thank you deeply for walking through this emotional journey. Thank you for giving your time, for feeling alongside us, for crying and being moved by each detail. Your presence here, watching until the very end, is what gives meaning to every story we tell. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories. Each new video is crafted to move, inspire, and remind you that even in the hardest moments, there is always a spark of light waiting to be found. And we want to hear from you too. Share in the comments. Have you ever found hope in the middle of pain? Have you lived through a reunion or reconciliation that changed the course of your life? Your story can inspire others who also carry wounds and hopes. We read each comment with care, because here, every voice matters. And don't stop here. On Lasting Tales, there are many other stories that will touch your soul. If this one moved you, we're certain the next will also bring tears, reflection, and inspiration. Watch another video now, because every tale offers a new perspective on love, loss, and the infinite capacity to begin again. Remember, here on Lasting Tales, every story leaves marks that time cannot erase. And that is why we continue sharing these human journeys, so that you never forget you are not alone. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of your heart, cherish the people you love, and never lose hope in new beginnings. Here on Lasting Tales, every story leaves marks that time cannot erase. See you next time.